So picture this. It's one of the darkest moments in World War II. America's just been hit hard, and morale is at rock bottom. And out of that desperation comes a plan. A plan so crazy, so technically impossible, that it was basically a suicide mission. We're going to dive into the incredible story of the Doolittle Raid. And this whole thing, it starts right at the top. After Pearl Harbor, the US was desperate for a win. I mean, any kind of win. Morale was just in the gutter. And President Roosevelt, he made his demand crystal clear. America had to strike back. He needed to send a message, and fast, that Japan was not untouchable. But here's the million-dollar question. How do you even do that? I mean, look at a map from back then. Japan was an island fortress. American forces were thousands of miles away. Your standard bombers? They didn't have anywhere near the range to hit Japan and make it back. It seemed, for all intents and purposes, completely impossible. So, to really understand why they'd even consider such a crazy plan, we've got to put ourselves back in that moment. It truly was a desperate hour. And it is so hard to overstate just how bleak things were in early 1942. The news was just a constant drumbeat of defeat. The Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong, one after another, they were falling to Japanese forces. The Pacific Fleet was in ruins. America needed something, anything, to show the world and, honestly, to show itself, that it was still in the fight. They needed a symbol, a spark of hope. And that spark? It came from a plan that was so out of the box, it basically broke every military rulebook there was. So here's the concept, and it's a wild one. You take Army medium bombers, big planes, and you launch them off a Navy aircraft carrier. Then you bomb Japan, and here's the kicker, you don't even try to come back to the carrier. You fly on and try to land in friendly airfields in China. This idea was, well, it was completely unheard of. Okay, this right here is why everyone thought the plan was completely insane. On one side, you've got the Army's B-25 bomber. It's big, it's heavy, and it's designed to take off from a nice, long, stable runway on land. On the other side, you have a Navy aircraft carrier. It's got a short flight deck, it's pitching and rolling in the ocean, and it's made for small, lightweight planes. Putting a B-25 on a carrier, it's like trying to launch a truck off a speedboat. It just shouldn't work. But if you're going to try the impossible, you need two things: the right people and the right tools. And this all had to be done in total secrecy. And the man chosen to lead this mission was a legend in his own right, Jimmy Doolittle. He went looking for volunteers, and you have to hear the pitch they were given. They weren't told the target, they weren't told the plan, they were just told it was an extremely hazardous mission, and they had maybe a 50-50 shot at coming back. And guess what? The men lined up. The level of guts that takes is just unbelievable. Now, to even give these guys a fighting chance, the B-25s had to go on a serious diet. They were stripped of everything that wasn't absolutely essential. That super accurate but super heavy Norden bomb sight, ripped out. The ventral gun turret, gone, just to save weight. They even got rid of the tail guns and replaced them with broomsticks painted black, just to maybe trick an enemy pilot for a split second. Talk about improvising. And that brings us to the biggest problem of all: fuel. Look at that number, 1,141 gallons. That is nearly double the normal fuel capacity. They crammed extra fuel tanks everywhere they could fit them, in the bomb bay, in the crawlway, everywhere. These weren't really bombers anymore. They were basically flying gas cans with wings, pushed way beyond their safety limits. So, with the crews trained and the planes pushed to their breaking point, it was time. The task force set sail, heading straight for one of the most audacious moments in the history of warfare. I mean, just try to imagine what that looked like. 16 huge Army bombers strapped to the flight deck of the USS Hornet, their wings literally hanging out over the waves. The Navy sailors on board must have thought they were seeing things. And this whole fleet, led by the legendary Admiral Bull Halsey, sailed deep into enemy territory under complete radio silence. The tension must have been incredible. And then, on April 18th, the plan goes sideways. At 7:38 in the morning, a Japanese picket boat spots them. Their cover is completely blown. Suddenly, Jimmy Doolittle has a terrible choice to make. Do you scrub the mission, or do you launch right now, 10 hours earlier than planned and way further out from Japan than anyone had ever practiced for? He made the call. We go now. One by one, those overloaded B-25s struggled to get off that pitching deck. By noon, bombs were falling on Tokyo. But that early launch came with a heavy price. As night fell, with their fuel tanks running on fumes, the crews had no choice but to bail out or crash land over China in the middle of a storm. And this gets to the absolute core of the mission. The physical damage from the bombs, it was pretty minor, all things considered. But that wasn't the point. The real damage was psychological. For the Japanese people and their leaders, this was a massive shock. The war had, for the very first time, come home. That powerful myth that their islands were sacred, divinely protected, and totally impenetrable, it was shattered in an instant. But that victory, that massive psychological blow, it came at a staggering cost. A cost paid not just by the raiders, but by their allies on the ground as well. So what happened to the 80 men who took part? Well, the amazing thing is that most of them, 69 in fact, actually survived and made it to safety, thanks in large part to the help of Chinese civilians. But not everyone was so lucky. 3 men were killed, either in the crashes or in action, and 8 were captured by the Japanese. And for those 8, what came next was absolutely horrific. And this is the truly devastating part of the story. The help that the Chinese people gave the American air crews, it came with a terrible, terrible price. That number, 250,000, that's the estimated number of Chinese civilians who were murdered by the Japanese army in retaliation. It was a brutal, horrific campaign of revenge against the very people who had shown such courage and kindness. It's a staggering, tragic cost that can't ever be forgotten. You know, it's pretty incredible, but Jimmy Doolittle actually thought the raid was a failure. He got back and all he could think about was that he had lost all 16 of his aircraft. But back in the States, no way. He was a national hero. He was awarded the Medal of Honor because America got it. They understood the real target wasn't a factory or a shipyard. The target was an idea, the idea that Japan couldn't be touched. So, with all that in mind, let's pull back and really look at the strategic domino effect of what Doolittle thought was a failed mission. This is really the so what of the whole thing. The raid's true impact was enormous. First, it gave Allied morale a desperately needed shot in the arm. Second, as we said, it completely shattered Japan's sense of being untouchable, which forced them to pull fighter squadrons back to defend the home islands. But here's the biggest one. The raid made the Japanese high command so furious, so embarrassed, that they became obsessed with one thing: sinking the American aircraft carriers. And that obsession led them straight into the Battle of Midway, a battle that would become the decisive turning point of the war in the Pacific. So when you put it all on the table, it's a really complex balance sheet, isn't it? In the pros column, you have this huge boost to Allied morale, a major psychological hit to Japan, and, of course, it being a direct cause of the victory at Midway. But in the cons column, you have the loss of all 16 planes, the high risk to the crews, and that absolutely devastating retaliation against Chinese civilians. It was a massive gamble, where both the payoff and the price were just monumental. And that really leaves us with a tough question to think about. The Doolittle Raid was a mission where the target wasn't made of steel and concrete, but of psychology and belief. It really makes you wonder about the strange math of war. How much physical damage, how many lives is a psychological victory really worth?